For more than 75 years, the VFW and Freedoms Foundation at Valley Forge has been connected through VFW's Voice of Democracy program. The VFW's commitment to educating young Americans on the importance of patriotism and freedom clearly and proudly aligns with the Freedoms Foundation's mission to educate our nation's youth and educators on the rights and responsibilities as citizens. Every June, the top 53 VFW department winners across the 50 U.S. states and foreign overseas areas in Europe and the Pacific come together at Freedoms Foundation at Valley Forge to participate in the Spirit of America Youth Leadership Program, a transformation 4-day program that emerges and engages high school students with the first principles of freedom. The VFW Distinguished Education Award is designed to recognize citizens of VFW members for their exponential contribution to education and intrinsic values of Americans' freedom and citizenship. As you see, our next guest has gone beyond that in his years as an attorney and a teacher. Since 2018, David Harmer has served as the president and CEO of the Freedoms Foundation at Valley Forge. David has appealed, published, and spoken in defense of personal and economic freedoms recognized by the U.S. Constitution and Bills of Rights. He has served as counsel to a subcommittee of the Senate Judiciary Committee. While working at Pacific Legal Organization, he worked tirelessly to defend the freedoms recognized by the First and Fifth Amendments to the Constitution. So today, we recognize David for his passion and dedication in defending the Constitution and his admiration work in educating the youth of America, teaching and inspiring them to preserve American freedoms and to show civic responsibility. It is now my honor and privilege to present the 2023 Distinguished Educational Award to Mr. David Harmer.
Distinguished Educational Award and Citation awarded to David Harmer, and special recognition and sincere appreciation of his exceptional commitment to educating young Americans of the intrinsic values of American freedom and our rights and responsibilities as citizens. His extraordinary commitment and dedication to making a positive impact on students through his teachings clearly aligns with the VFW's mission to educate our nation's youth in effort to strengthen and bolster our democracy for future generations to come. For this, he has justly earned the highest degree of admiration and respect from the veterans of foreign wars of the United States. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands in the official seal of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States, this 26th day of July, 2023, approved by the National Council of Administration, signed Timothy M. Borland, Commander-in-Chief, Dan West, Adjutant General.
Commander-in-Chief Borland, Adjutant General West, Director of Programs Lynn Rolfe, leaders of the VFW at the national, department, and post levels, and to each of you veterans whose service in foreign wars has preserved the independence and freedom of the United States of America. On behalf of Freedoms Foundation of Valley Forge, I'm honored and humbled to accept this award. It recognizes not my personal efforts so much as the long-standing collaboration between the Veterans of Foreign Wars and Freedom's Foundation at Valley Forge. Commander Borland has invited me to take just a moment to give you a bit of history and explain why our two organizations have collaborated and what we can do for you, for your posts and your departments, and your efforts to ensure that the rising generation appreciate the freedoms that have been bequeathed to them through your service, and those of your colleagues who were not able to return. Roll the clock back with me 74 years, will you, to 1949. Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower has returned from Europe. He's not yet thrown his hat in the ring for the presidency, so he's between gigs. Now, even then, Ike was concerned that Americans were clear about what they were against, Nazism, fascism, but not so clear about what they were for. What was it about the American way of life that was worth preserving, worth fighting to preserve, worth, if necessary, dying to preserve? So Ike and some other concerned citizens that you may have heard of, people like E.F. Hutton, decided to establish Freedom's Foundation to create and build an understanding of the spirit and philosophy of America's founding ideals as reflected in her founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. Now, it probably would have made sense to put this foundation in New York or Los Angeles or Washington, D.C., but Ike insisted that it be located in Valley Forge, the crucible of the American Revolution, because he said it was there in Valley Forge that the American experiment had come closest to extinction. And it was Ike's determination that never again would it come so close. And he promised in speaking at Freedom's Foundation at Valley Forge that the American experiment with worthy disciples, he said, would endure. That is our collective mission as the VFW and Freedom's Foundation at Valley Forge, to create those worthy disciples, to ensure that among the rising generation, all too often whose education disregards or even disparages the ideals of the American founding, that they understand what a privilege it is to be a citizen of the United States of America and an heir of the American experiment. So how do we do that? Well, Ike and his colleagues acquired a magnificent 75-acre property bordering what is now Valley Forge National Historical Park, and put up some handsome colonial-style buildings, a boys' dorm, a girls' dorm, classrooms, a non-denominational chapel. Throughout the year, we bring high school students from around the country to Valley Forge for 4 to 6 day immersive, intensive, experiential educational programs in the history and ideals and continuing relevance of the American founding. Of all the groups, I will tell you, the most remarkable students are those the VFW sends every year. The winners of the Voice of Democracy contest. If you could be there with them, and I hope many of you will be over the years to come, your faith in the future of this nation and in the ability of the rising generation to preserve what you have fought for would be reinforced and strengthened. You would be reassured and gladdened. Now, I'm here to make a brief announcement. For decades, VFW has shared with us the Voice of Democracy students. We are now opening that opportunity to all students that any post or department wishes to sponsor. Take a moment to stop by the programs booth in the exhibit hall. Director of Programs Lynn Rolfe and I will be there and we'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. But we invite you to ensure that more students have the opportunity of coming to Valley Forge and understanding the sacrifices made by their forebears for their freedom. Ike expressed his conviction that the American experiment would never again come so close to extinction as it did in Valley Forge during that terrible winter of 1777 to 78, when the long-suffering soldiers of the Continental Army having fought honorably, well, but lost, were at what looked like the tail end of a long, ignominious retreat from the battles at Brandywine and Germantown. The initial optimism of 1776 had given way to grave concern about the ability of the then colonies to prevail against the mightiest military on the face of the planet. It is reported that Washington was found at one point kneeling in the snow in Valley Forge in prayer, drawing on the powers of heaven, calling upon divine providence to preserve his long-suffering troops through that winter. Washington marched into Valley Forge December 19th, 1777, with about 11,000 soldiers. Exactly 6 months later, June 19th, 1778, he led about 8,000 soldiers out. Now, there were a few enlistments and a few replenishments, but that was basically a wash. What happened to the missing 3,000? How did his army dwindle from 11,000 to 8,000? There was no battle there, at least no military battle. The only battles were against disease, exposure, hunger. The specter of famine haunted the camp. Corruption and ineptitude in the quartermaster and commissary departments meant that very little of the land's wealth made it to the soldiers who were fighting to gain America's independence. In that bleak hour, Washington sought the interposition of what he referred to as divine providence. And it came. But as so often it comes, it came not in the form of a heavenly miracle. It came in the form of individuals who did their part, who struggled and fought. And Washington, even as he faced insubordination in his ranks, hostility from Congress, the difficulties of feeding and motivating his troops, Washington somehow managed to hold them all together through that bleak winter, and never again would they come so close to dissolution. Now, to General Washington, our nation's founding father, and General Eisenhower, our foundation's founding father, we feel that we owe a great debt of gratitude, and the way we demonstrate that is by redoubling our efforts to ensure that what they stood for, what they fought for, what they advocated, and what they secured will be preserved. With your help, we'll ensure that the Republic will endure. Again, to each of you, to your leadership, and to all of those who labored with you and weren't able to return to homes and families, we express our intergenerational debt of gratitude and our determination to ensure that none of those sacrifices shall have been in vain. Thank you.